Mishpacha. This is a day we have been waiting for a while. We have a really badass rabbi who is here for an interview. I mean, like, incredible human being who has worked with RAC in Massachusetts, has been a pulpit rabbi, and now is you the CEO of the WRJ.
Yes.
Women
Women
of
for
Reformed
Reformed
Judaism, which
Judaism.
used to be the National Federation of Temple Sisterhoods and BT Dubs. There was a chapter in my dissertation about them.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
I would love to talk because it is so cool that the WRJ/NFTS was doing international political work when they were founded.
I know. And do you know that we were founded right here in Cincinnati, which is also amazing, along with all the other Reform Movement institutions? So,
I did my research there at the archive. Yeah.
We're a North American institution and have global reach today, but we were founded right here in Cincinnati. So it's an amazing part of the history and legacy and something that I love about being here now.
Oh, absolutely.
And ironically, a lot of it was anti-war. Their early speeches were all about trying to find world peace and against fascism. Fantastic.
Yes. And we have an amazing early policy also about immigration and welcoming the immigrant and the stranger, which is also so early. It was like 1917. So cool.
I know. Okay. So giddy. This is me nerding out about history of the Jewish women in Cincinnati.
Yeah. This is why we're here. It's great.
The community has always been about a global reach and social justice and taking care of the stranger and taking care of our Jewish family, which is what we want to do now.
It seems so important now.
Yeah.
Revisit.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with our introduction. Rabbi Hirsch, welcome. So this interview has been postponed and we are now doing it virtually, which is all cool and sort of the gift of technology. Which is also sometimes my weak point. But do you want to tell us how you are doing and how your people are doing?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am Rabbi Liz Hirsch. So glad to be here. Thank you both for welcoming me into what I know is going to be a great conversation today. And I am married to Rabbi Neil Hirsch, who is the new senior rabbi at Wise Temple here in Cincinnati. And we're so glad to have relocated here. I'm sure we're going to talk more about being new to Cincinnati and living in Cincinnati at some point in our conversation as well, too. And we have 2 kids, wonderful, amazing children, and kids get sick. They get colds. They run around and get all different kinds of small bugs and germs. And we learned from the pandemic, we don't want to send kids to school with a fever or something else like that and keep them home to keep everyone healthy and safe. So I'm home with my sick kid who's doing totally fine. Thank you. It's a small bug, but we just got to make sure that he's getting healthy. And for me and for women of Reformed Judaism, this is one of the core pieces, one of the challenges that we're working on is how can women be engaged either as top-notch lay leaders and volunteers or professionals in their working lives when the expectations and the system is really set up still for one working parent, right? There are so many different layers and lenses, and we know that school is important and the school community are places of learning and growth and connection for our kids. And school is also childcare. We learned that so well in the pandemic. I'm wondering if the 2 of you have any thoughts or reflections or experienced that as well too. But I've thought about this a lot, not just when we have kids who are homesick, but also when we had all those ridiculous snow days in my first year here in Cincinnati. So I'm from Massachusetts. I'm from the Northeast, and I know snow. I have had snowy winters my whole life, and in Massachusetts, when it snows, they plow the snow and then the kids go back to school the next day, right? Like you put on your boots and like they salt the roads. And I love, love, love Cincinnati so much. And we were getting ready to move here And we were thinking about what do we need to bring with us, what not. We knew there were 4 real seasons here, but we heard, oh, it really doesn't snow that much. So the last thing that my husband, Rabbi Neil Hirsch, did before we moved here was sold our snowblower to a friend. and then we got on the plane. Like, he drove it over to his house, and then we got on the plane and moved here. And they said, we'll never need it. And then Cincinnati had the worst winter in 50 years. And we were like, in addition to school being closed, we were just snowed into our house for like 4 days. It was really something crazy because they just didn't plow my street. It was not a priority street. So we learned then again the lesson that we thought we had learned in the pandemic, that when kids are home, I am a salaried employee. I'm the CEO of a nonprofit. I have a remote role, except when I'm traveling and on the road visiting with sisterhoods and women's groups around the country. So I had the flexibility to be able to be home with the kids. But after, I think it was 4 days of snow days that we had, it's like, it's not just what are we going to do with them, but also like we have to go to work,
Right.
and thinking about all those places. And what we've learned and studied is that flexibility and the ability, even if you're not fully remote, to work remote is one of those pieces that actually has been a huge benefit and a learning of the pandemic. But that doesn't, especially for women who the burden of childcare, I'm talking sociologically on the whole, often falls on them. But also we need things like universal childcare, and we need those policies that support the undue burden on women. We saw during the COVID pandemic a record exodus of women from the workforce, like erasing years of progress of women's equity and entry into the workforce because just of the need to take care of kids who are at home.
Yeah. I think the pandemic definitely introduced a new way of life for many of us in terms of how we work and how we raise our kids. And you mentioned on our end, my children were a little bit older. So I had, at the time of the pandemic, I had a senior who was graduating high school. So when it hit, everything was canceled. She didn't get to have all those milestones that so many people had. So it was a little different for us because I wasn't as dependent on school as a childcare resource, but it was still just as important. And I feel like that the children that lived during that time, no matter what age they are, they really lost something by not being in school. I feel like for younger kids, a lot of socialization is learned in those early years, and by not being in class for 2 years, they lack that now. They miss that in a sense.
And we miss the socialization with people our own age and getting out of the house. I remember my daughter put a tent up in her bedroom and decided that was France. And she was like, bye, Mom, I'm going to France. Like, cool, that's awesome. And then she was lucky enough to go to a school that was in session with masks. But after that year, when they took off their masks, they didn't actually recognize each other. They
Yeah.
didn't know what the bottom half of their faces looked like.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the school districts did everything they could to make it as normal as possible for these kids, which I think is fantastic when dealing with such a challenging time. But it did steal them, I think, of some of that.
And it also, we were lucky enough to be in the position where our livelihoods were not risked.
Dependent on.
Right.
And the fact that there were so many people who could not take care of their kids and feed their kids and juggle all of that was pretty hard. And so the 4 days of the snow was a moment when I asked my daughter if she was going back to France in her room.
Right.
And it was one of those moments where we saw it again. But we also had the infrastructure in our house. Like, we had set up a room where she could do virtual school and where she could get away. But yeah, I agree with you. So, other than the welcome to Ohio, we brought snow for you.
And you never know what you're going to get in Cincinnati. It could snow one week and be 70 degrees the next.
I'm picking up on that for sure.
Tell us about your transition to Cincinnati. Like, this is a different kind of community. We talk about it as a shtetl. How's it going?
We Love it here so much. We are so happy as a family in the Jewish community. Cincinnati is amazing. I am a alum of HUCJR, of the rabbinic program there, and but I was a New York student, so I had never spent any time in Cincinnati before we moved here. I'm from the Northeast. I never lived in the Midwest. We love everything about being here. It's just been an easy place to settle in, to meet people, to find things we want to do for our kids. And we love the Jewish community so much. And we also really love how central being part of the Jewish community is for people who are connected and want to be a part of it. It's a big place about where people have their social network, people are really welcoming. And I think that while I certainly think about it every day because it's part of my role and the work that I do about the connection to the history and the legacy of the Reform movement and liberal Judaism overall here in Cincinnati, that it's a community that's really proud of that, right? People are proud that Reform Judaism and by extension, all of the liberal denominations really have strong roots here and that people are connected in. And they take pride in that history. And that feels front and center for a lot of people. And that's been really meaningful for me to connect in with as well.
I believe it. Have you noticed differences in Jewish life and leadership, having worked and lived in different regions of the country?
So I have been in my role with Women of Reform Judaism for a few years, and you mentioned that while we were living in Massachusetts, I was one of the founders and initial co-chairs of the Religious Action Center of Massachusetts. That's a state-based community organizing and social justice project that got together all of the synagogues of Massachusetts. I've also been involved with the Reform movement nationally, and now in my national North American role that I have with Women of Reform Judaism, I do get to connect and interact with folks all over the country, all over Canada, where we have wonderful active sisterhoods and women's groups as well, and really all over the world. So I think that while I've really enjoyed getting to know the specifics and the ins and outs and where to get your bagels and things like that of the Cincinnati Jewish community, then for me, because that's my frame that I've brought to it now for some time, both personally and professionally, to our connected global reform movement, that I've really found that Cincinnati has its nuances, but every community has its nuances. And I actually think there's a lot more that unites us and makes us similar than there might have even been before the internet and more connections and things like that. But that's also what it means to be part of a movement, is we have things that make our own local congregations, communities unique. You walk in and there's always that moment when I come, if I'm spending Shabbat Friday evening, going to services with the congregation, and I love to sing, I love to participate in services, but I'm like, hold back on the Amidah because they probably are chanting that prayer like a little bit differently. You don't want to throw somebody off, right? So there's like small nuances and differences, but I find that overall, because Cincinnati is just a vibrant and thriving Jewish community, that there's more that makes us similar than different from each other.
It's beautiful.
And you found the bagels.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, it's good. It's important. A couple spots. I won't play favorites on a recorded interview.
We'll talk when the mics are off then.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have been talking a little bit about the WRJ, and it is so exciting that we have you here in Cincinnati as CEO of this huge movement, the women's branch of the Reform movement that has historically been so active and influential, not just in the Jewish community, but in national conversations. Can we talk about how women in lay leadership and leadership in the Jewish community has changed with rabbis, people who are gender nonconforming, people who are LGBTQ+, and how you see this changing in identity?
Yeah. So I think that something that I love about being at a legacy organization that has gone through so many chapters, eras, if you will, and iterations of our work is, our mission has remained the same to engage women and all people in leadership in Jewish life. And that's meant very different things when we were getting off the ground in the 19 teens and suffrage, women actually being able to vote and participate in the life of our democracy in our country. Like, if you think about that as the core original thread, and then all the way through to today, we have some of the same work that we're doing, and some things have changed dramatically, right? For nearly 50 years, it's many decades before Rabbi Sally Priesand was ordained the first woman rabbi here in Cincinnati, we were advocating for women to be able to participate fully as clergy, to be able to lead and to be ordained in an egalitarian way similar to men, which, thinking, all right, this is a movement, a history, a denomination that has said women and men are equal in terms of worship, but yet not to be able to allow them to take on that leadership role that was core to us for so long. Now, we have a strong presence of people of all gender identities within clergy, and we're able to make sure that our focus is still on inclusion and equity. Something that I'm really proud of is that we were the first national Jewish organization in 1965, not just within the Reform movement, but anywhere, to advocate for the inclusion of LGBTQ people in Jewish communities. We're the first to go on record in 1965, and set the tone for much of the work that came afterwards. We've often been able to be pushing a little bit out ahead, both based on our values and because as the women's organization, we can say things that can then have an influence on the rest of the movement, on the broader institutions, on the synagogue organization, on the rabbinic organizations, and all of the rest. So that legacy continues through to today. Under 2 years ago, I worked with our amazing lay leadership to shepherd through a process to amend our constitution to open up our membership, which had been at that point restricted to those who identify as women and those who identify as Jewish, to open it up to people who identify as women and those who identify as non-binary and gender fluid, and if being part of a women's organization resonates with those folks, and also not just to those who identify as Jewish, either by conversion or birth, but also to those who are on a Jewish journey. Those two pieces are so core and consistent with who we are because we're about inclusion, about making sure that people are able to be fully present and connected and respected in the place where they are. And when we were going through that process to really make sure we did listening and connecting with folks who were on the ground, we learned a couple things in their local sisterhoods and women's groups. We learned that making those policy changes to our membership and constitution were descriptive, not proscriptive, right? We were talking about folks who are already engaging with us, whether on the North American national level, in our regional districts, or in their local congregations and communities and sisterhoods. And we were also very often the local sisterhood or women's group is a first doorway, not just into a congregation or community, but into Jewish life. We found that many folks, if they were on some kind of conversion or Jewish journey, or maybe, the process for them was about, supporting their family in and finding ways into Jewish life, if without a formal conversion, that the sisterhood was very often a doorway in. Come to this great casual program, learn about a holiday, make relationships, and meet people. So it's really a way that we've been able to fulfill our legacy right there, advocating for women's participation in Jewish life and also for inclusion of all people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's one of the things that we were actually going to talk about, sisterhood. Many of us remember sisterhoods organizing the Oneg and raising funds for HUC and supporting Israel. And that's not necessarily the model anymore. And what does involvement look like today in sisterhoods, would you say?
So first of all, organizing the Oneg and raising funds for our reform movement through our Yes Fund is still awesome and great. And it's a that folks want to connect with their sisterhood, their women's group, their local community, and with our broader reform movement. We love it.
Perfect.
And that's wonderful. Yeah, WRJ has 3 pillars. Our pillars are sisterhood, spirituality, and social justice. Sisterhood, like folks might say, oh, it's kind of an outdated word. I love it. I embrace it. And I think that in many ways it describes for us both the local relationships, groups, and connections that folks have. And it also is a way to express our connection to women and people around the world, to talk about those shared global bonds. So I think it's a wonderful word, a wonderful concept, and it's a great way for people to find connection and community. That
Women
said,
raising women up as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Women raising women up and supporting each other and sharing and celebrating each other's stories.
Yeah.
And also, we found that it's a wonderful and important lens on our social justice work, on our engagement with Israel. We're focusing on making sure that we're advocating against gender-based violence in the most recent conflict in Israel. And we're also supporting women, and as we're thinking about abortion access and reproductive rights today, everything since the fall of Roe is so state by state. So you might sit here in Ohio where we've protected certain access to reproductive rights through the ballot initiative that happened here several years ago, and know that because you are a part of Women of Reform Judaism and our national sisterhood, that you want to find ways and connection to advocate for women's rights and access, or raising funds through different abortion access networks, that to make sure that just because your rights are protected in one state or one place where you live, that we're supporting women in that way as well too. So I love sisterhood.
Absolutely.
I think it encapsulates all of those things.
It's beautiful.
I want to shout out to my home sisterhood. When I was a new member of our congregation and my daughter was in religious school, there was always one member of the sisterhood when there was a meeting who'd just walk around the lobby. Hey, what you doing? Why don't you just come hang out with us? And that is how I've met some of my close friends at synagogue, because we were just sitting doing sisterhood stuff, but I was also I was included. And that is a fantastic way to get entrance into a community and then build those connections. And hooray. Yeah. Even though I did not want to cook, but I was happy with the Yes Fund.
Yeah, find that doorway, and the low barriers, we hope. And something else I think that's really important to share is that our local groups and our regional districts are also a place for women to really express and explore those leadership skills, and to really take ownership over things. We're the North American umbrella, and I'm so honored and glad to lead a staff of about 15 on the national level. And it's amazing also that our North American president, Karen Sim, is currently a member of Wise Temple, located in Cincinnati. And I told the next president that I'm not moving for her, but it's really special that we get to be in the same congregation in the same city here at this time. And so much of that is led from the North American level, but on the sisterhood level and in our regional districts, we support folks. We provide resources if they need anything. We have a lot of ways, we send out resources. We'll talk about some of the current priorities and things that we have that are available to sisterhoods and women's groups to do. And they lead, right? They don't have and they may be connected, as many are, with a staff person or a clergy member who's assigned to support them, but it's an opportunity for women to really step up and exercise leadership, and to own it in that way.
Amazing.
So this is a 2-part question. Moms like us, no longer going to religious school and watching our kids. We want to be involved. We want to somehow have an investment and a stake and make a difference. And we're feeling a huge sense of overwhelm. Where do you start? What do you do when it seems to be coming from every single side? The anti-Semitism, the social injustice, the attack on women's rights. I could keep going, but then I'd go hang out in my bed and eat some soup. So what do you suggest for almost empty nesting moms like us?
Yeah. So I think that something that drives me, other than being an unfailing optimist, and my family has no idea where they got me from, but I, other than maintaining a spirit of optimism, I feel so lucky and so blessed that I have something that I can do, right? Every day, I have multiple ways that I personally, and then by extension, by leading WRJ, we can take action, right? We don't have to be passive. We know that the challenges of the world, the challenges of our country are far beyond the influence or the authority of any one person that you or I would meet. And at the same time, collectively, we have avenues and ways to be a part of something, whether that's, lobbying and advocating or simply just creating stronger connections in Jewish communities. So that's the first thing is, yes, like the go to France, sit in your bed, have soup approach is like totally a great and important technique for self-care. And everyone should make sure that they're taking care of themselves in all the ways that they need to. And there's so many things that you can do, whether that starts with just walking in the door and finding some connection and community and joy as a sort of antidote to anti-Semitism and the challenges and difficulties of being part of a Jewish community or identifying as Jewish right now. Like, we don't need to let it all be bad. There's a lot of joy. I walk into one of our communities, I just walk into my own community here on a Sunday morning for religious school. You see the joy, right? You see the connection and community. And for folks who are beyond that point as the doorway in, there are ways to get involved with different, local groups, but also more broadly, whether you want to be involved with advocacy. WRJ has a few key top advocacy priorities right now: reproductive rights, democracy, and addressing gender-based violence, preventing gender-based violence. And also, we have regional districts. This year is our year of the district, I like to call it. We have 6 regional districts that cover all of North America, where folks can engage kind of beyond their direct local circle with their sisterhood or women's group. And this year, instead of having a North American conference, we're having 6 different regional conferences. So the regional gathering that Cincinnati is within is called the Heartland District, and that's going to be March 12th to 15th in Indianapolis. If you are feeling, what can I do? How can I get involved? Going to be in community with other Jewish women and people who care is a great place to start. I really think 2 texts from Pirkei Avot, from the teachings of our ancestors. If we're being really technical, it's teachings of our fathers, which just shows you how many thousands of years of patriarchy we have to address. But I still love and embrace the text, is the idea of al tifrosh min hatzibor, don't separate yourself from the community. And also lo alecha hamacha ligmor, that it's not your duty to complete the work, but neither are you free to ignore it. I think if we hold those ethics, those texts, those ideas, then there's endless opportunities to get involved and to find ways to make meaning of our world.
I have a quick question, and this is possibly just for me. The March 12th get-together, is that at IHC? Which congregation?
So whenever we have our regional districts, then the locations rotate, right? So
Okay.
I'll be participating in a couple of the district conventions. The Pacific District this year for us is gathering in Pasadena, but in other years they've gathered somewhere else within the district. So the city is hosting, and that means that the local congregations and communities are getting together, and we can connect you up with the right folks who know the specific schedule. But I know that when we plan national events, when we're coming into a particular city, like we're getting ready to host a North American board meeting of WRJ here in Cincinnati, which is wonderful in the spring. So we'll move around between the different active congregations and communities and sisterhoods that are here so that everyone shares in the hosting. So, but if you're interested, we are very happy to get you to the right people from the, yeah, for sure.
So can we talk a little bit more about the 3 pillars that you're working on? And can you give us some concrete examples and also entrance for activity for women?
Totally. So I think, in terms of sisterhood, we've talked a little bit about both getting connected with your local community. Also, if folks are listening, and I know we have a lot of listeners from Cincinnati, but hopefully folks who are connected to other places, then, make sure that you're connecting up with your local group if you have one. But if you don't, folks can join as an individual member of WRJ. We know not everybody lives somewhere where they have an active sisterhood or women's group. And also, not everybody feels that draw or that pull to their connection to their congregation. We have wonderful individual members who connect with us at all levels of our leadership and engagement. And I think also, if we're thinking about the spirituality pillar, something that I'm super proud of, and it's probably behind me because it usually is, not as a prop, but because I use it all the time. WRJ is responsible for the first Torah women's commentary and raising the funds for that resource, where all of the commentary, all of the poetry, all of the resources and interpretations of our Torah, of our sacred 5 books, was written by women. And it's the green cover Torah commentary, if you've seen those in your congregation. And we love to use it because, there's thousands and thousands of years, as I was saying a few minutes ago, of men's voices and interpretations of our Torah. So we have a long way to go to build up those resources now that women have access to study and to sharing their voices. But we created that, and it's actually available on Safaria now. If you're a Safaria online web user, that's a big step forward that we took in the past year that we're really proud to have partnered with them on that. And of course, with the Central Conference of American Rabbis, who worked with us on publishing the book, the commentary, so that you can have that at your fingertips to have the access to women's voices in Torah. That is huge. And we continue to create different prayers and worship and resources. Melissa, I don't know if you want to say something about that.
Oh, I was just getting very excited because it is
Yeah.
such a big deal to include women's voices. And it's not to exclude other voices, but it's like, hey, we deserve a place at the table.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
we would like to join you, please.
Yeah.
Or
I
not
think
even please, we're joining.
Yeah, I think that I really hold this value and ethic and long have before I was leading WRJ, that if you're creating a source sheet for a text study or a Torah study or something like that, just like include one woman, like handing over at least a source sheet that has no women's voices in there. Like, the answer should not be, well, there aren't very many women out there who I could quote or commentate on, because that's like the whole point of having that resource available and for folks to know and to see themselves on the page, for sure. And then in terms of our social justice pillar, we started to talk a little bit about that and our priorities that we have. But one other way that folks can really get involved this year is we are organizing resources and programs and advocacy materials for a North American WRJ Day of Action on April 12th. And this is something where we're encouraging local action with national or global reach, and making sure that we have folks. If you're familiar with like a mitzvah day kind of concept, this is something that with our North American network, we're encouraging as many different sisterhoods, women's groups, and just individual people to participate in their own way, with lots of resources available. There will certainly be, with our wonderful active WRJ sisterhoods here in Cincinnati, opportunities to participate locally in our Day of Action. And what I love about that is it really reflects what we've been talking about that sisterhood pillar of a local connection, but you are part of something that's greater than yourself.
That's amazing. Something I think we should definitely look into. Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to be super busy.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a lot to do for your spring calendar, for sure.
It's so, I think, spiritually like uplifting to know that there's ways to have an impact now.
Especially in a time when I think we're feeling more and more isolated.
Yeah,
right?
and helpless
Yeah.
to do anything, to
Yeah.
make a difference.
These are really easy entrances and then we get to help fight for reproductive health and democracy and against gender-based violence.
Which is all stuff, we're all raising children, bringing children up into this world. And it's kind of a scary place right now. And so to be able to join the fight to have these rights is really a wonderful thing.
Continue having them, actually.
Absolutely, to continue, yeah. So, we have been listening to your podcast. Oh my goodness. And we love how you frame things through Esther's stories and actions. Why did that framing resonate with you?
So I love the story of Esther. I think that, folk, how can you not love Purim? I mean, so like people are familiar with her story. She's really like a known character, not one of I love the really obscure women of the Bible. Don't get me wrong. We've already expressed that we're going to nerd out over here about certain things. But Esther is such a known and recognizable character. And I really wanted to take from the start with this podcast a leadership lens on it, right? There's lots of ways to speak about women, to highlight their stories, to engage with women's rights and all of those different pieces. And there are many wonderful women, female identified characters throughout our Jewish tradition who express those different attributes and qualities of bravery and, those courage. And Esther is really identified with leadership because of the quotation from the book of Esther that is our frame for the podcast. That who knows, maybe it's just for this moment that you find yourself in a position of leadership. So knowing that we wanted to take the leadership lens in the conversations, it just was the natural fit. And I came up with the idea to have the podcast, and then it was October 7th, and immediately so many of the themes and the experiences that Esther has throughout her leadership journey in the story took on a different type of resonance than we could have ever imagined, right? There's so many ways to talk about anti-Semitism through the lens of Esther's story and the Purim story. So I've spoken with a lot of my guests through the lens of Esther about anti-Semitism. And the rise in anti-Semitism throughout the world since October 7th, 2023. And also, uniquely, the story of Esther, the Purim story, is a diaspora story, right? It takes place outside of the land of Israel, where the Jewish people, and especially through Esther as queen, have a certain, and Mordecai in his key role as well too, have a high level of leadership and access. And at the same time, we're not in control of our own fate. We're a minority living in a majority culture. And that's been a really rich and resonant way to have conversations with guests who have come on to the podcast as well.
So did you imagine this sort of Esther moment for yourself? Because you have also been flung into this, especially since October 7th.
Yeah, thank you for the question. There's a cadre of us who we are connected to each other and keep in touch, who are all millennial Jewish women who started in our CEO roles of national North American Jewish organizations, either right before or right after October 7th, which is really, really good for the Jewish world. We have so far to go, and that's something else that we talk about on the podcast, is we've made great strides in women's leadership. I'm honored that I represent Women of Reform Judaism and the Reform Movement at the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations. And in our Israel mission that we had this past year to February, for the first time, there were more women than men on the mission. And at the same time, that was largely through lay leaders and board chairs. We still have a long way to go for the professional leaders as women of organizations, where while more women are taking those kind of leadership seats in some organizations with budgets under $5 million, when you get above that kind of mark into much larger organizations, the numbers flip and women have not broken through that glass ceiling. So that's something we talk about on the podcast a lot as well, too. And I think, yes, absolutely, stepping in to lead an organization right before October 7th, 2023, is in and of itself an Esther moment and a time to step up. And I've been honored and blessed to have several such moments where I've been in the right place at the right time to lead, as I ask my guests to reflect on. A few weeks ago at the end of the summer, I was invited by the Reform Movement and by the Conference of Presidents to represent the Reform Movement in a small meeting with the Foreign Minister of Israel. And we go and, have these conversations. And I was able to express to him on behalf of our movement that we are Zionists, that the Reform Movement is the largest Zionist movement in North America, the largest collection of Zionist Jews outside of Israel. And at the same time, that we're really challenged by a lot of the actions of this government, and it's challenging our connection, our ability to, have that vibrant relationship with Israel because of the challenges that are happening. So I think that, we want to make sure always that when you have that opportunity to step up and lead, that you take it, right? And to say yes to the invitation, and to feel confident that the words, while, I was never going to get, the meeting was off the record, so I was never going to get an immediate response of, yes, I will do everything that you say. I will relay back, Rabbi Hirsch, that you said that we need to bring the hostages home immediately, and we need to, acknowledge and end the suffering of the soldiers and the reservists and the families and the Palestinians, all those who are suffering in Gaza. But I was able to say those words and then know that they're being heard, and we're sensing subtle shifts and having an impact. To be able to hear that the foreign minister then a few weeks later made speeches in public and private meetings reflecting some of those points. You feel that the impact of the work and being in the right place at the right time.
That is absolutely incredible.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Because that's how we both feel.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And we feel like our perspective is simply not heard
right.
in the non-Jewish community, but also in Israel. So,
right.
Wow,
that's yeah.
Thank
that's
you.
powerful.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, and I think that's why, to me, it's so important to be speaking up and to be speaking in this way, both in those high level meetings, but also as much as possible so that folks feel like they're not alone, right? Like that is, I think, where so much of the North American Jewish community is at right now. And we only hear from the extremes, right? But if we
100%.
are engaged in conversation with each other, then we find that more people are where we're at. And I hope that people can feel the strength and the comfort and the connection in knowing that they're not alone.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
So we are still minorities in a hegemonic Christian society. And I have found that a lot of non-Jews use the story of Esther for their own chance to choose leadership. And I've often found that it seems interpreted in ways that I don't necessarily agree with. How do you address that, or do you just simply not?
Yeah, I mean, Esther was ours first, so I certainly have followed a little bit of the conversation and Christian connection to the story of Esther, and I think that I feel so firm in the ways that I understand her story and confident in that for me it really hasn't been a huge issue, and I think that one of the things that I'm focusing on this season of the podcast of Just for This, which I really hope folks will tune in and listen. We have new episodes that come out every week on Mondays at noon.
Do listen.
Is that Esther is considered to be one of our prophets in the Talmud, which is a totally male, patriarchal written text about laws and interpretations of our Jewish tradition, they list out in this beautiful teaching from the Talmud that there were 48 male prophets and 7 women prophets or prophetesses, if you will. And the 7 prophetesses are named, and Esther is named among them. So it's a way to answer your question in that we have so many years of tradition and interpretation, and that doesn't even get into the commentators who have written midrash, interpretive stories about Esther, that like I live within a respect for all people and all religion, and so much within the text and tradition of our own rich Jewish heritage that there's just endless ways to explore and understand Esther through that frame and that context.
Very nice.
Amazing. So after October 7th, we realized that no one was really talking about middle-aged Jewish moms like ourselves in the middle of the country. And that's why we started our podcast. Do you hear similar things from your members?
I think that I so admire and respect what the two of you are doing. And I'd love to hear, actually, is there a story or is like a moment where you decided like, we have to have a podcast? Like I would love it if you would tell that story. And I think that, yes, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, people really want their voices to be heard and to understand that like, you don't have to be at the extremes, and that finding those connections within community and finding something that you can do, I totally resonate with the conversations that you're having. But I would love to know if there's more of a story or how the podcast came to be.
Well,
So Melissa and I have been friends for a really long time, and I
Our
think our
li-
families have been.
yeah, our lives have always kind of paralleled each other. Even if we weren't like aware of each other in childhood, our grandparents lived on the same street. And then our parents built houses across the street from each other.
Mhm.
And when our daughters were younger, they both attended the local High Tots preschool program. And that's really when we started connecting. And one of the things we realized we had in common is that we both love writing. And that for me is my passion.
Yeah.
And Andrea, I think the same could be said for you. And so over the years, we kept saying, we should meet, we should talk about our writing. And we kept having this conversation, but we never really did it, did we?
And then when we did start sitting together and writing, and we were sending out articles to be published,
Mhm.
um,
It-
I was getting rejected from national publications, and they were like, "That's great, we like it, but that's not what we do anymore." And I'm like, "You're not interested in the perspective of the middle-aged mom."
Because we did a lot of writing on what it was like being mothers to younger children.
Yeah.
But our girls have gotten older and parenting has changed, and our perspectives as mothers has changed, even through a Jewish lens.
Yeah.
And so we were both writing about where we were in our lives, but we weren't finding that that was what the already established publications were wanting to print.
And it could be just ego, but I was like, "Wait a second, I know what I wrote was good,
And we have something to say.
and I have something to say, but why can't it be shared?"
Right.
Um, and then October 7 happened, and we're like, "Okay, we we feel alone. I bet other women like us feel alone, and we're really good at talking to each other."
Yeah. And through the talking was healing. I
Yeah.
think when we were able to, when we would meet to write, we would spend more time just talking and catching up on how we were feeling about the state of affairs in the world and what we were reading in the headlines and where we were struggling mentally and emotionally. And that was kind of cathartic.
Yeah.
And
And our hopes for our daughters.
our hopes for our daughters and their futures. And so we thought, if we're having this conversation between the two of us, maybe this could actually be a podcast. This could be something that people would want to listen to and find connection with.
And then, as I like to say, one miserable, long January, we were like, "There's nothing to lose. Let's pitch it."
Yeah.
And you folk picked it up, and we're utterly grateful
So
because
thankful. It's gotten out there
Because
just this
people-
past year. And now we get to interview people like you and make
That's
connections
great.
across such a wide spectrum. So we are truly grateful.
Yeah.
one of the things I've been reflecting on as we now welcome the new year is just how far we've come in this past year.
Is the gratitude that we get to
Yeah.
do this little thing to represent moms like us.
Yeah.
That's
And
wonderful. I think that's something that I think about with the podcast that I host. But I think it really is relevant for the story you just shared and for your podcast as well too. Is as a congregational rabbi before I was in this role with Women of Reformed Judaism, I wrote a sermon every week, right? So I studied texts and I had a message that I wanted to share with folks. And with this podcast, certainly with my podcast, we're certainly rooted in Jewish text and wisdom and tradition, as we were talking about. And also, I really embrace the idea that the Jewish philosopher, theologian Martin Buber taught that he wants not text books, but text people. And I
Yeah.
really love to let the people and their stories and the women who I invite on, it sounds like the people that you get to be in conversation as well too, to be the text and to live in our ears and off the page and to inspire us. And I think that through conversation, through dialogue, we so often come to a different place and a different understanding and have that sense as well of not being alone.
Absolutely.
yeah. And I think that the connection is that a lot of women in the WRJ are in a similar place in their lives as we are. And because I'm a member of the WRJ, et cetera. So can you tell us what's next? What's next for WRJ? What's next for the women like us? What do you see?
Yeah, I think that, we came into this conversation a little bit talking about Oneg and sort of the old school mentality about sisterhood, and certainly that our local groups, our connections, the very important ways that our sisterhoods and women's groups support their local congregations and communities and a thriving Reformed Judaism on a local level is so huge. And at the same time, our national presence, our North American presence, and our global reach, like these things are crucial to being engaging in the conversation, right? So we're convening a national day of action. We're having ways for people to get involved in different campaigns. And something that we haven't spoken about as much, but I know that you referenced, is our Yes Fund, Youth Education and Special Projects, where since our earliest days, we've raised funds initially here in Cincinnati for the reform movement, for rabbis to study and to become future leaders and really function as the Jewish women's foundation in many ways for the reform movement. And then by extension, through some of the other grants that we've given in past years to other startups that particularly embrace different diversities, identities, ways into Jewish conversation and community that might be outside of the mainstream reform movement organizations. We are so honored and proud that we give out these grants year over year, and we're taking a close look at how our philanthropy can have an impact this coming year. So we're really excited about looking at how we can continue to have that type of an impact through the amazing gifts and donations that women and folks all throughout the country make gifts into the Yes Fund that enable us to do this grant making, really like a giving circle, right? That everyone's work is amplified and then we're able to be in those conversations, but also just making sure that we're broadening our connections, that we're active on the North American national stage, that we're engaging folks in all stages of life, right? There's no one person, one age, one stage that fits WRJ at this point. So we're trying to engage people at all points of life to make sure that they can find meaning and connection and ways into our community.
What great work. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Hirsch.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. It's been such a pleasure, and hopefully we'll get to Kibbitz soon in person. But I, again, just appreciate being able to do this virtually for all the reasons that we talked about. And it's very, very wonderful from the two of you to everyone else to have such a warm welcome to Cincinnati as well.
Oh, you are so
Definitely
welcome. And yes,
welcome.
there
Yeah.
will be spice cake and coffee when we do meet.
We will get it on the calendar.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
So, Mishpacha, this has been a huge treat. Rabbi
Absolutely.
Hirsch of the WRJ
Yeah.
to talk to us. You guys go check them out. It's well, I don't know if it is for you, but the WRJ has been part of my life for a while. And I hope that you go find a warm welcome as well.
And please listen to Rabbi Hirsch's podcast because it's wonderful.
It really is.
Yeah.
And Kibbitz on, people.
Kibbitz on.